Continuing on lesson 7.2, we're going to do the factoring by grouping part that is also included in this lesson. So here's what we're going to look for. When there is a four-term, and would you circle that please? Four-term polynomial. When there is a four-term polynomial, notice what I say. Try to factor by grouping. In other words, this isn't always going to work. It's going to work now while you're learning. But when I start giving you polynomials and say, just factor them, and I don't give you any other help, I just say, I want you to get the factored name for this polynomial. If it's a four-term polynomial, this might be the way that will work for it. Okay, so that's what we're going to learn today. So here are the steps. When you have a four-term polynomial that you're going to try to factor by grouping, you're going to make two groups of two terms each. So a four-term polynomial, we're going to divide it into two groups. And there are going to be two terms in each of those groups. Okay? Then we're going to GCF each group. As if we had two separate polynomials. We're going to GCF the first two terms. We're going to treat them as their own polynomial. We're going to GCF the other two terms. We're going to treat them as their own polynomial. And then, when we do that, each group should have a common factor. In other words, the GCF, after you GCF'd each of those two groups of two terms each, they should have one of their factors for each of those should look exactly alike. They should have a common factor, which then becomes the GCF of the four-term polynomial, which probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense right now until we start looking at it better. Okay, notice, I have an example here for us. So, it's a four-term polynomial. Step one, make two groups of two terms each, and I must have also changed to add the opposite in the same step. So notice how I made the two groups. What did I do? Put them in parentheses. So I have 6x to the fourth plus negative 4x cubed. That becomes a group. And 12x plus negative 8, that becomes the other group. Then, without showing any work, because I'm hoping we're to the point, and if you're not to the point yet of not showing the dividing out, you can't do it in your head, then you need to show those steps also. But I say that 2 is the largest number that can be divided out of both 6 and negative 4. And I say that the most number of x's that can be divided out of x to the fourth and x to the third is x to the third. So I'm saying the GCF of that first group is 2x cubed. Then the 3x comes from, where does that 3x come from, do you suppose? Where do you think the 3x comes from? Josh?
First common factor of 6 and 4 is 2, and 2 goes 2 6 3 times.
Okay, so what's happening is we're taking the first term, that's 6x to the fourth, and we're dividing it by the GCF. I'm going to show it dividing as a fraction. We're dividing by the GCF. 6 divided by 2 is 3. X to the fourth divided by x cubed is x. So the result of after you take 6x to the fourth and divide it by 2x cubed, divide out that GCF, you have a 3x. And then, same thing, over here I have a negative 4x cubed that I have to divide by the 2x cubed, the GCF again. Negative 4 divided by 2, negative 2. X cubed divided by x cubed, they cancel each other out, don't they? So what we have is what you've been doing without showing all those steps of work. What we have is this right here became this right there. That's the factor name for that first group using the GCF method. Then we have our other group here. Here's the other group. We're going to look for what is its GCF. Well, the biggest number that can be divided out of 12, that can also be divided out of negative 8, is 4. The 12x has x's, but the negative 8 doesn't. So we can't have any x's in our GCF. So our GCF this time is just that 4. 12x divided by 4 is? What's 12x divided by 4? 3x. What's negative 8 divided by 4?
-2.
Negative 2. So here we are. This is the factored name for that group. So what we did now is we just did that step that says, so make 2 groups, that was the first thing, GCF each group. And now we're to this bullet. It says each group should have a common factor. Do they have a common factor?
Yes.
What is it?
2x cubed and 4.
No. What do they have in common? What do they have that is exactly the same factor? One?
3x plus -2.
Yeah, the 3x plus negative 2 is exactly the same. The 3x plus negative 2, after it got factored, we have that one. They each have one of those. Each of them have that 3x plus negative 2. So that now becomes what we call the GCF of the, now we're going back to the whole polynomial working together. We're saying, okay, back to that you once upon a time were a 4-term polynomial. I am now the GCF of the whole polynomial. And now we say, what would the other factored name be? When we divide this first one right here, if we divide that 3x plus a negative 2 out of it, we take it out of it, what would be left is the 2x cubed. We bring down this addition sign, that's what's right here. And when we divide this 3x plus negative 2 out of this one, what's left is the 4. So our final factor name answer is cleaned up 3x minus 2, the factor they had in common, times 2x cubed plus 4, and notice where that's at. It's really this easy. Here's where it is, right here. 2x cubed plus 4. Okay, so the one they have in common becomes the GCF in its own parentheses, right next to, no addition anymore, right next to 2x cubed plus 4. If we FOIL that back out, where should it take us? To the beginning, back to 6x to the 4th, minus 4x cubed, plus 12x minus 8. It should take us back to that if we FOILed it back out. Okay, let's practice together here. One that, so you can be writing and maybe it'll be a little bit easier to follow. Okay, do we have any subtraction to change? No. Okay, so we're going to rewrite it now with making our 2 groups. 6a cubed plus 8a squared. They're going to make their own little group. Plus, this is the plus sign right here, has to come down. And our next group is the 9a plus 12. Okay? And don't think you can just stick parentheses and go to work. First of all, we always want to make sure subtraction is changed to add the opposite. Then we can stick our parentheses in, okay? Okay, so what's going to happen now is we're actually going to GCF that first group, 6a cubed plus 8a squared. And we're going to try to do it without showing all that work we've been showing because we should be, hopefully, pretty good at it by now. So what I'm hoping you can do is I'm hoping you can say to yourself, what is the GCF of 6 and 8? What is the GCF? Listen to what I said. What is the GCF of 6 and 8?
2.
Ariel? 2. What is the GCF of a cubed and a squared? Just a? A squared. They can both have they both have 2 factors of a in them. So 2a squared is our GCF for that group. Yes, G.
Can we just use the smallest number?
Smallest number of smallest exponent?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like A and A.
Yeah, that is kind of what ends up happening. 2 is smaller than 3, so it has to be 2. Okay, what's 6a cubed divided by 2a squared? Let's just do it like this. What's 6 divided by 2? 3. What's a cubed divided by a squared? A. Now again, if this isn't working for you, just doing it with mental math, you find a spot to go and work and say, I have to take 6a cubed and I have to divide it by 2a squared. You need to see it to help you, that's what you should be doing. Okay, then we bring down the plus sign that's between our two terms in our group. What's 8 divided by 2? 4. What's a squared divided by a squared? 1. They cancel each other out, don't they? It's 1. And 1 times 4 is 4. I would stop right there and do some mental math, distributive property. If you took 2a squared times 3a, would it take you back to 6a cubed? If you took 2a squared times 4, would it take you back to 8a squared? So that's kind of how you can check also. Okay, what's going to come down next? The plus sign, that's between the two groups. And now we're going to GCF the other group, 9a plus 12. It doesn't have to have the same GCF. We have to say to ourselves, what is the largest number that can be divided out of both 9 and 12? 3. A, and we don't have any A's. Do we have a variable part in our GCF? No, we do not. We can only, our GCF is just a 3. 9a divided by 3. 3. 3 what? A, yeah. And 12 divided by 3? 4. Okay, what do we like about that? Cameron, what do you like about that?
Both the binomials and parentheses are the same.
Yeah, the binomial factors of each of those groups are the same. They have, that's their common factor. Shamarki?
So how about if it was like 9a plus 12a, like what would the answer be?
Then if the second group you mean was 9a plus 12a,
Yeah,
then our GCF would have just been 3. Our GCF would have been what?
that's what I'm
They
saying.
both have they would both have A's in them, so then our GCF would have been 3 A's. Okay, but we don't have A's in both terms, so that's why we don't have any variable part in our GCF.
So
You
how about if it was like cubed or something? Like only 1/2 cubed, or like squaring, not able to have anything.
Any A's at all.
Yeah.
So in other words, if this one had been 9a squared plus 12, right? Okay, can we still take any A's out of 12?
No.
No, so then it would still be, our GCF would still just be 3.
Alright.
Okay? Anybody else? Okay, then what do we do with that one that they have in common, Malcolm? What do we do with that one they have in common? Now that I have you back, okay? What do we do with that one they have in common? What is it? What happens with that? Trey?
It's its own binomial.
It's its own binomial. It's in the factored name now. So in other words, that 3a plus 4 that they have in common becomes one of the binomial factors for the name. And the other binomial factor that's going to be backed right up next to it showing multiplication is what? What's that one going to be? Cameron?
2a squared plus 3.
Yeah, the 2a squared plus 3. Or in other words, when you divide 3a plus 4 out of that one, you get 2a squared. When you divide 3a plus 4 out of that one, you get 3. Don't you? The one they have in common becomes the GCF. It gets divided out. What's the result after it's divided out? So this right here, let's just write it again. 3a plus 4 times 2a squared plus 3 is the factored name. Now, because you only have 6 problems to do, you're going to do check problems. Okay, so let's go back to the front side, those of you who have moved on, and we're going to check. In other words, we're going to multiply the factors. We're going to make sure. How many ways do we know to multiply binomials? We got FOIL, we
Rectangle.
got the vertical, and we got the rectangle. Remember so pick which one you're gonna use to show multiplying those out. Okay, I'm gonna use the rectangle. So, for those of us who are a little rusty with the rectangle method, I'll help you out. And those of you who didn't remember would rather do FOIL, you go ahead and do FOIL. If you're gonna do vertical, set it up properly to do vertical.
So,
Mm-hmm.
can I ask you a question first? Oh,
Sure.
okay, so I don't understand like the 2A2. I don't understand why it goes into the second one, but it can't go in the first one. In like the first equation.
So you're talking about this right here?
Yeah, can't that go in
Okay,
the first one?
okay, but see what happens, JC, is when we divide, remember when we do GCF something? So if I was just GCFing to a cure, erase this. If I was GCFing it, if all I had to do right now was GCF 6a cubed plus 8a squared, I would say the GCF is 2a squared, right? And remember what our work was. We would take 6a cubed and we would divide it by 2a squared, and we would take 8a squared and we would divide it by the GCF 2a squared. And the result would be what would be in our binomial, so the GCF would have been out front, and in the parentheses would have been our two terms that we would have gotten here, which are, in this case, 3a and plus 4. So that became the factored name for that first group. If I now want to divide out of that, if I want to divide that by 3a plus 4, I would have to say, okay, I got 2a squared times 3a plus 4. I need to divide what I'm now saying is a GCF, 3a plus 4. So this 3a plus 4 becomes a GCF, it's out front. I have to divide each of these two terms, each of these two groups that I had, have to be divided by that 3a plus 4. So see how they cancel out? And the result is this.
And that didn't happen in the first one?
Yeah, it did. Yeah, I mean in the example up here? Up here?
No, like, for one.
I'm not sure I can figure out where. Okay. And then this is the other one, 3 times 3a plus 4. That has to also be divided by 3a plus 4. That happens. Remember what we do with the results of our division? They become part of an addition. So I guess that's where that one came from. I'm not really sure I can understand where you're going with it. Everybody done multiplying? Emerson?
I still don't understand the green part.
The green part. The final answer, the factored name,
Yeah.
where it came from. I know, it is kind of challenging to figure out, like, okay, maybe the thing to do is for us to show all the dividing out and just make them into separate problems and then bring them together in the end, but I think that might even confuse us more.
I can go over it.
Okay. Okay. So when I multiply using the rectangle method, my first box gives me 6a cubed. This one gives me 9a. This one gives me 8a squared. This one gives me 12. So my result is, remember, I bring all those out of here and I put them together in an addition problem. And I see if it looks like this one, except this isn't in standard form, so these two would trade places, and then it would look just like it. So the result, the product, gets me, so my factored name does get me back to the binomial, or to the polynomial we started with. Okay, so you have to do a check problem whether you're using vertical multiplication, rectangle multiplication, or FOIL. And if you don't get back the result, what you started with, I should say, what are you gonna do?
Go back to the wrong.
Go back and try and figure out what you did when you were trying to write its factored name, okay? Okay, let's just go practice another one, maybe it'll clear up some of the questions some of you are still kind of having trouble with because we haven't practiced it much. Let's change this to add the opposite. That should be our first move, and maybe even stick a 1 in front of that x. Then, once it is all addition, and not until it is all addition. I guarantee you, you will get these wrong if you don't do the add the opposite, and you just start and stick some parentheses in and say, off to the races. Stick the parentheses in after it's all addition. Okay, so just for a temporary bit, these two groups are going to work independent of each other, but then they're going to come back together. They're going to say, you know what do we have in common that can be divided out of both of us that will become the GCF of the whole? Because that's really what we're looking for right now. We're looking for our first factor of our factored name is, we're really looking for the GCF of the whole 4-term polynomial. And there is no way that we would be able to look at 3x cubed plus negative 12x squared plus 1x plus negative 4 and say, this binomial is the GCF of the whole thing. Because our GCFs aren't going to be, of our final answer, are not going to be monomials today, they're going to be binomials. So what can we divide out of 3 that can also be divided out of negative 12? Isaac? 3. So we're going to GCF, we're starting to GCF just that group. What can we divide out of x cubed that we can also divide out of x squared? Stefan? No. Rose? X squared. So both of those terms can have a 3 divided out of them and an x squared divided out of them. We are going to get a monomial GCF for just those 2 terms. So what is 3x cubed divided by 3x squared? X. What is negative 12x squared divided by 3x squared? Negative 4x? Isn't x squared divided by x squared, don't those cancel out? So isn't it just negative 4? Okay, remember what I said. If you just do a mental math distributive property, would it take you back to those 2 terms? You just do a quick mental math distributive property is 3x squared times x, 3x cubed is 3x squared times negative 4, negative 12x squared. That's what you want to do. Then we're going to bring down the addition, maybe make it a great big one for now. Bring down the addition sign that's between the 2 groups, and now we're going to GCF that second group. What's the GCF? What's the biggest number you can divide out of both 1 and negative 4? Cameron? 1. Can we divide x's out of both of them?
No.
No, the second term doesn't have any x's. So what's our GCF this time? 1. And we have to write that. That's our GCF. We can't not have it. Okay, I don't want that parenthesis quite so far away here. What's 1x divided by 1? Class? X. That was a weak class. What's negative 4 divided by 1?
Negative 4.
Negative 4. Do we like the results?
Yes.
Why?
Because both the binomials are the same.
Both the binomials are the same. We've now found the binomial GCF of the 4-term polynomial. That's what we were looking for, and now we have it. Okay, so maybe that's what we need to stop and say, here, what we just did. We just GCF'd this 4-term polynomial. We found the GCF for the whole thing. Okay, Isaac?
Are we ever going to encounter something when the 2 binomials are not the same?
Well, if you do, then it's not factorable by grouping, or you did something wrong. So that could happen, yes. Okay. Okay, so there's our GCF. So maybe this is where we need to stop right now and say, what would we do before once we found the GCF? Once we knew what the GCF was, what was our next step?
Right now, what you see.
What do we do with that GCF, Trey?
Put the two together.
Well, okay, we put the two together, but what did we, so, in other words, if, again, can I just make one up like we were pretending that we had done, this was in our homework for today. We did 9x cubed plus 6x. And we found out that the GCF for that one was 3x. We said this is our GCF. What did we do next? No, what did we do next? We divided each term by that GCF. We did this. We said 9x cubed divided by 3x, 6x divided by 3x. Okay, so what is that? What's 9x cubed divided by 3x? 3x
Square.
squared. Okay, what is 6x divided by 3x?
2x.
2.
2x.
Just
2.
2. So then what did we do? We said, oh, okay, take the GCF, put it out front. That's the first factor in the name. And then the other factor will be 3x squared plus 2. Is that not just what we've been doing the last couple of assignments? Is just that right there? We found the GCF, then we divided both terms by it, and our GCF was out front as one factor. The result after dividing was the other factor. Okay, well, we're doing the same thing up here, you guys. We're going to take this right here, and we're going to divide it by, this is one term, you guys, right now. This is a multiplication. This is one term. We're going to take that term, and we're going to divide it by x plus negative 4. What do we get when we divide that by x plus negative 4? We get 3x squared. This right here, 3x squared, x plus negative 4. I'm going to show it with a fraction bar instead. I'm going to show my division with a fraction bar. These cancel out when we divide, and this is the result. So 3x squared, remember what we did with these? We added them together after we did the divisions. So plus, what's going to happen when I take this term? It's a term, it's 1 times x plus negative 4. That is a whole term. What would happen after I divide x plus negative 4 out of that? Isaac?
Would you get the 3x squared plus 1?
So what, no, just tell me what I'd get with this. The circled green. After I divide the x plus negative 4 out, what do I have?
Oh,
What is that?
negative 4.
If I take this one right here, 1 times x plus negative 4, and I divide it by my GCF of x plus negative 4,
1.
what do we get? We get 1. So the result is also a binomial. So the GCF was a binomial. The result after dividing was a binomial. That is our factored name. We should get every single time today, we should get a binomial times a binomial as our factored name. So would you write that beside that? That is our factored name. But because you're getting out of all the work and you're doing a lot of dividing in your head, what are we going to do to verify that we have a good factored name answer for our 4-term polynomial? What are we going to do? We're going to do a check problem. We're going to check it out and make sure that it multiplies back to the 4-term polynomial. So you decide. Oh, by the way, we didn't get that cleaned up yet. What would its cleaned up name be?
X minus 4.
X minus 4 times 3x squared plus 1. We don't want its cleaned up name probably for checking, but for the actual factored name, we do want it cleaned up. Okay, I'm going to use FOIL this time. You use whatever method you want. but show a check problem. You have to show those, that's why you only have 6 of these to do. And then I always want, I think typically, not always, but typically the 4-term polynomial will be given to you in standard form. So after you multiply it out, clean it, put it in standard form and clean it up before you compare it. So x squareds would come next, the x would come next, and the subtract 4. So I'm saying I should have started with 3x cubed minus 12x squared plus x minus 4. Is that what we started with?
Yep.
Is that what we were factoring?
Yep.
Okay, then we can feel pretty confident that we did all right. Okay, let's have you get started on the homework, and I didn't realize we didn't have much time left here, sorry.